I welcome you to this morning's event. First, I'd like to thank the BAYT for hosting this program. This program is generously co-sponsored by Larry and Bonnie Monsick, George and Eleanor Getzler and families, in loving memory of their parents, Abraham and Ida Monsick. A special thank you for their support. Holocaust Education Week is especially grateful to our presenting sponsor, Great Gulf, and to our leader sponsors, Apple Tax Foundation, Honey and Barney Sherman, the Israeli Foundation, and the Elizabeth and Tony Comper Foundation. We are proud to have CTV and the National Post as our media sponsors. This is the 34th year of Holocaust Education Week. This year's theme is collaboration. Our programs will explore distinct ways in which individuals and groups participate in and responded to the persecution and genocide by the Nazi regime. Holocaust Education Week needs your support. Your generous donation will allow us to continue to offer outstanding educational programs for many years to come. Donation cards are provided at all our programs, so please fill out a card or donate online at www.holocausteducationweek.com. We thank you for your generosity. Finally, if you wish to keep your electronic device on, please switch it to silent mode. I'm confident that you will find this program thought-provoking and informative. Thank you.
I am proud to say that ever since the inception of Holocaust Education Week 34 years ago, the BAYT has consistently participated every single year since year one. I was just told this by one of our members. It's a great source of pride for us to be able to continue this very important tradition, which only becomes more and more vital with every continuing year. Allow me to just remind you that the rabbi who helped institute Holocaust Education Week here at the BAYT, Rabbi Taub, will be joining us this coming Shabbos. And you'll all have the opportunity to greet him if you'd like to be with us this Shabbos. And finally, on Motzei Shabbat, right after Shabbos, we will be concluding Holocaust Education Week with the end part of our program, which will be the flyer that you see on your tables. We will be talking about the entire Kastner affair with a newly authored book and with also some clips from different documentaries which talk about the great controversy of this man Kastner and whether he was a hero or a villain of the Holocaust. And you're certainly all invited to join us then. The BAYT is filled with many, many educational programs, and we therefore invite you to take a look at some of the flyers that are either on your table or in the bins on your way in or out of the building. And you're certainly welcome. We always invite any and all guests to participate in the activities that we have here. I really am here just to offer some introductory remarks, but by way of introduction, I happened to be on Facebook last night, which I try to do once every now and then, and someone had posted the following video, which I found was fascinating. A young boy from some South American country, which was not a rich country, and the parents are videoing their presentation of a gift to their child. And so they give him a gift-wrapped square, and he opens up the square, and it's a piece of wood. And the parents tell him, this piece of wood is for you. It's a butcher block. You can chop meat on it. And you can tell the boy gives a forced smile, but he wants to be gracious to his parents, whom he loves very much. And he tells them, thank you, Mommy and Daddy. I look forward to cutting meat on the board. And then a minute later goes by, and they give him another box. And they say, here, open this one as well. And he opens the box, and he slowly pulls out the gift-wrapped, also another square from this time the new box. And he opens it up, and he discovers it's the tablet that he's always wanted. And the boy bursts into tears. He uncontrollably is crying. he runs to his mother and father, gives them big hugs, and tells them how much he loves them. And the reason why this is so heartwarming is because in today's world, if we give a tablet to one of our children, sometimes the response is, how come it's only the mini tablet and not the bigger tablet? And a lot of times we live in such a wealthy society today that it's difficult for us, especially sometimes our children who we love so much, and we want them to be able to have as much as we can give them in life. We want them to have every single luxury that is available to them, either that we had or we didn't have. I want to make sure that you as my children have everything available to you so that you can be happy and that you could have all the things that I can possibly give you. But that's also sometimes a liability because it makes us and our children, it makes it difficult for us to be able to relate to a generation of only one generation ago, the generation of our parents, who, if they would have received a piece of wood for their birthday, would have burst into tears crying because many of them, certainly the survivors of the Shoah, most of them did not even have parents who could give them a piece of wood for their birthday. And it's sometimes, therefore, so difficult for us to relate to their story that to have an opportunity like this, to be able to actually just hear them speak and talk about what life was like, gives us a whole new appreciation to what life is for us today and reminds us how to connect to our past so that we can learn the lessons of history and make sure that they are never repeated again. That's why we're so grateful to our survivors for being here today, and why we're so grateful to you, our children, for taking the time to come here today with your parents and be able to hear these stories. I hope you learn a lot. And finally, I'd like to call upon two of our survivors who just want to offer each 1-minute introductions. I'd like to ask Mr. Gruda and Mr. Kleinberg to please come forward.
I asked the rabbi if it would be possible for me to express my feeling about this morning. I feel the rabbi, the shul, the people who are involved in providing this wonderful occasion to keep the memory alive deserve a yasher koach. Rabbi, thank you so much for having us all. Hopefully we should be here for many years to come and keep the memory alive. Thank you.
Okay, the time is short for us in totally, so I'll speak also just a few words. I hope that those events will go on for many, many years, because from the Jewish history we know that a lot of things happened and it was forgotten. But this tragedy was so great that it deserves that it should be adored. And I really express my deepest thanks for those people who are willingly trying to keep the memory alive. And thank you very much for letting me say a few words.
Now, we'll all break out into our separate tables, and you'll be able to have a chance to speak to and ask questions of the survivor that's at your table. We've also set up tables outside the room, just outside these doors to my right and to your left possibly, so that if you have someone at your table who has a little bit of difficulty projecting their voice and you would like to get away from the louder noise in this room, your table is welcome to get up and go to one of the tables on the other side of the doors if you'd like to have more audibility. Thank you.
Thank you to all the survivors and family and friends and the BAYT youth. I would like to call up Rebecca Aziza, an alumna of the March of the Living program, to say a few words.
Hi. This spring will mark 10 years since I was a participant on the March of the Living. I was inspired to originally give this speech a couple of years ago when I overheard a conversation that a group of women were having. These women all had elementary or high school aged children, and they started discussing the March of the Living. One of the mothers, clearly very concerned with her daughter's academic success, said, "I could not imagine her missing two whole weeks of grade 11 in order to go on March of the Living." My immediate thought was, I cannot imagine not going on the March of the Living only because of 2 weeks of high school. I didn't feel comfortable interrupting their conversation and giving my 2 cents, but I will say here that the March of the Living was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and looking back on it 10 years later, 2 weeks of high school seems insignificant in comparison. For those of you who don't know, the March of the Living is a trip for high school students, usually those in grade 11 or grade 12, and you spend the first week visiting Poland and various cities and towns where Jewish life once flourished, as well as the concentration and death camps where so many lost their lives. Survivors travel with the group and share their stories along the way. The highlight of the trip is a march on Yom HaShoah from Auschwitz to Birkenau with thousands of other participants and survivors from around the world. The second week of the trip is spent in Israel, where students get an appreciation for the ancient and modern history of the land. The students get to experience both Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom HaZikaron in Israel. For about as long as I can remember, I took an interest in learning about the Holocaust. I read about what felt like every historical fiction book based on the period and picked it as a topic for as many school projects as I could. For me, participating in March of the Living was never a question, and even with so much previous interest and knowledge, there's nothing that could have compared. The day we arrived in Warsaw, we toured the Jewish cemetery. As with many of the places we visited at this site, we were able to see evidence of Jewish life in Poland before the war, paralleled with lessons about life during the Holocaust. Most of the graves were from the pre-war period, dating back to the early 19th century. Our tour guide started to explain us information that was on the tombstones, showing us graves of significant people in history. It was a warm, sunny day, and it felt like a nice, interactive Jewish history lesson. Then we reached a small field in the middle of the cemetery, surrounded by plain stones marking the edges. We learned that once the Warsaw Ghetto was established, all too quickly it became impossible to continue creating suitable graves. There was not enough time to properly bury each of the dead, and eventually a mass grave was created, and that was where we were standing. For me, the contrast was so intense it is hard to describe. It was like walking through a regular cemetery, like one here in Toronto, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a mass grave, and it was only because that many people were dying that fast from the terrible conditions in the ghetto. I cannot help but notice how fitting it is that Yom HaShoah and March of the Living fall closely after Passover. On Passover, we are commanded, V'higeta lebinecha, to teach the next generation about our bondage in Egypt. And is this not what Holocaust education is also about? It is always special hearing stories from survivors. I feel honored to spend this morning with the survivors in this room and hearing the survivors at my table speak. On the March of the Living, we had the unique experience of hearing our survivors tell us the stories while standing where events took place. It was a particularly moving moment for me when one of our survivors spoke with us at Birkenau. He described how at this very place, he watched his mother and sister taken away on trucks, only to learn after that he had watched them being transported to the gas chambers. I wonder if there was a feeling of crisis when in the desert, the last generation who had actually been slaves in Egypt were dying away. I know how many of us feel a great loss occurring with fewer and fewer survivors among us to share their first-hand stories. But I look at everyone thousands of years later, still recounting the story of Egypt, and I think about my experiences on March of the Living, and look around at everyone in this room today, and I have hope that Holocaust education and awareness will stay strong. One of the greatest things for me about the March of the Living was the strong connection I saw create with each participant, and even though everyone came from diverse Jewish backgrounds, and I hope that this can continue to go on for many years to come. At the Passover Seder, we learn about from the four sons that you must teach every person according to their ability. The March of the Living addresses this perfectly for this generation's challenge of Holocaust education. I saw how participants were given a unique lifetime connection to this part of our history. Every participant became a witness by walking through the towns and camps and hearing first-hand stories from survivors, both of those that traveled with us and those that we met along the way, and just like everyone in this room today has become a witness by listening to the stories told. On the trip, no matter what background we came from, we all left with a new sense of responsibility and connection to the past.
Hi, my name is Michelle Jacobs, and I'm offering the closing remarks to this most important and meaningful program today. On behalf of the Youth Department, I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the survivors for sharing their heroic stories with us today. The powerful experience that were shared connect our youth and all of us to the painful past of the Holocaust, and at the same time give us inspiration and courage to move into the future as Jews. We're so thankful for all your bravery during the Holocaust and for your courage to talk about these events with us today. We wish you all continued health and happiness with your families for many years to come. As Elie Wiesel, author and Holocaust survivor, said, "I marvel at the resilience of the Jewish people. Their best characteristic is their desire to remember. No other people have such an obsession with memory." It's our job now to remember and carry on the messages of the Holocaust. We must carry on the survivor stories for the future, especially now as anti-Semitism seems to be on the rise again, threatening the Jewish people. Remembering the lessons of the Holocaust and by educating our youth about them, we can best ensure that a similar tragedy will not happen again, and also ensure the preservation and continuation of the Jewish people. In addition to our wonderful survivors, this event was made even more meaningful by having the attendance and participation of over 30 members of the BAYT youth. Thank you for your insightful and respectful questions that you asked during the survivor presentations, and for realizing the important role you serve in the Jewish chain. The BAYT young people were prepared for this morning's program by a talented and experienced educator, our member, Mrs. Harriet Fleissing, a leader in Holocaust education programming for the York Region District School Board. She so kindly volunteered her time early this morning and conducted an educational seminar which prepared youth to participate intelligently in this program. Thank you, Mrs. Fleissing. Once again, we wish to thank our sponsors of this morning's event, the Getzler and Monsick families. On your tables are donation cards to support additional Holocaust education programming at the BAYT. If you do wish to donate, please fill out the small card at your table and give it to one of the volunteers of the program this morning. We wish to thank as well all three introductory speakers whose opening remarks set the stage for this morning's program. Wei Sheng from the Sarah and Chaim Neuberger Holocaust Education Center, our Mora de Asra, Senior Rabbi of the BAYT, Rabbi Karobkin, and Rebecca Aziza, who just addressed us moments ago, alumna of the March of the Living. We also wish to thank Ellie Gottman for editing the profiles of each survivor, and George Getzler of Jesma Printing for printing the booklet that we can all take home today. As well, we would like to thank all the volunteers who compiled our survivors' stories, which are shared in the booklet. Eddie Cohen was so kind to photograph this event for us today. We thank you for volunteering your time. As always, we would like to thank Leslie Lewis, our office manager at the BAYT office, who works tirelessly for all of us in all our programming efforts. Thank you for helping us with this most important program every step of the way. The contributions of my BAYT Youth Committee co-chair, Sarah Silverman, and our youth director, Richard Winkler, worked tirelessly together with the Holocaust Education Committee to make this morning's program a success. The organizational and the behind-the-scenes efforts ensured the program ran smoothly. Finally, we would like to thank and give a hearty yasher koach to the Holocaust Education Committee, Susie Bogler, Elaine Genisov, Jordan Max, and their volunteers. The vision for an intergenerational Holocaust education program at the BAYT, where survivors, their families, and our youth come together to remember, to share, and to learn, is a tremendous undertaking. Meetings were underway shortly after Pesach and were steadily attended in order to coordinate all the different aspects of this program. Thank you again for your tremendous time, efforts, and dedication to planning and implementing this most important and meaningful program. Have a wonderful day. You want me to do the final? Yeah. One final announcement. Once again, the official thank you to our event sponsors and vendors, Tommy and Sippy Zwiebel, in memory of their fathers, George Zwiebel and Alfie Ellenbogen, who both survived the Holocaust to raise religious families in Canada. And our sponsors, the BAYT Sisterhood, BAYT Youth, European Elegance for our lovely tablecloths, Jesma Printing, Grzinski's Bakery for the delicious Danish, and Tovli for the dairy platters and bagels this morning. As part of Holocaust Education Week, the BAYT's offering another program which takes place next Motzei Shabbat, November 7th at 7:45. Anna Porter, a Canadian author, is coming to speak about her book titled The Kastner's Train. Was Kastner a hero or a collaborator? The program will be moderated by Chaim Klein. Thank you so much.